Welcome back to 3 more chapters of Carmilla. We start tonight with chapter 4. Her habits, a saunter. I told you that I was charmed with her in most particulars. There were some that did not please me well. She was above the middle height of women. I shall begin by describing her. She was slender and wonderfully graceful, except that her movements were languid, very languid. Indeed, there was nothing in her appearance to indicate an invalid. Her complexion was rich and brilliant. Her features were small and beautifully formed. Her eyes large, dark, and lustrous. Her hair was quite wonderful. I never saw hair so magnificently thick and long when it was down about her shoulders. I have often placed my hands under it and laughed with wonder at its weight. It was exquisitely fine and soft, and in color a rich and very dark brown, with something of gold. I loved to let it down, tumbling with its own weight as, in her room, she lay back in her chair talking in her sweet, low voice. I used to fold and braid it, and spread it out and play with it. Heavens, if I had but known all! I said there were particulars which did not please me. I've told you that her confidence won me the first night that I saw her, but I found that she exercised with respect to herself, her mother, her history, everything, in fact, connected with her life, plans, and people, an ever-wakeful reserve. I dare say I was unreasonable. Perhaps I was wrong. I dare say I ought to have respected the solemn injunction laid upon my father by the stately lady in the black velvet. But curiosity is a restless and unscrupulous passion, and no one girl can endure with patience that hers should be baffled by another. What harm could it do anyone to tell me what I so ardently desired to know? Had she no trust in my good sense or honor? Why would she not believe me when I assured her so solemnly that I would not divulge one syllable of what she told me to any mortal breathing? There was a coldness, it seemed to me, beyond her years, in her smiling melancholy, persistent refusal to afford me the least ray of light. I cannot say we quarreled upon this point, for she would not quarrel upon any. It was, of course, very unfair of me to press her, very ill-bred, but I really could not help it, and I might just as well have left it alone. What she did tell me amounted, in my unconscionable estimation, to nothing. It was all summed up in 3 very vague disclosures. First, her name was Carmilla. Second, her family was very ancient and noble. Third, her home lay in the direction of the west. She would not tell me the name of her family, nor their armorial bearings, nor the name of their estate, nor even that of the country they lived in. You are not to suppose that I worried her incessantly on these subjects. I watched opportunity and rather insinuated than urged my inquiries. Once or twice, indeed, I did attack her more directly. But no matter what my tactics, utter failure was invariably the result. Reproaches and caresses were all lost upon her. But I must add this, that her evasion was conducted with so pretty a melancholy and deprecation, with so many and even passionate declarations of her liking for me, and trust in my honor, and with so many promises that I should at last know all, that I could not find it in my heart long to be offended with her. She used to place her pretty arms around my neck, draw me near to her, and, laying her cheek to mine, murmur with her lips near my ear, "Dearest, your little heart is wounded. Think me not cruel because I obey the irresistible law of my strength and weakness. If your dear heart is wounded, my wild heart bleeds with yours. In the rapture of my enormous humiliation, I live in your warm life, and you shall sweetly die into mine. I cannot help it. As I draw near to you, you in your turn will draw near to others, and learn the rapture of that cruelty which yet is love. So, for a while, seek to know no more of me and mine, but trust me with all your loving spirit." And when she had spoken such a rhapsody, she would press me more closely into her trembling embrace, and her lips in soft kisses gently glow upon my cheek. Her agitations and her language were unintelligible to me. From these foolish embraces, which were not of frequent occurrence, I must allow, I used to wish to extricate myself, but my energies seemed to fail me. Her murmured words sounded like a lullaby in my ear, and soothed my resistance into a trance, from which I only seemed able to recover myself when she withdrew her arms. In these mysterious moods, I did not like her. I experienced a strange, tumultuous excitement that was pleasurable, ever and anon, mingled with a vague sense of fear and disgust. I had no distinct thoughts about her while such scenes lasted, but I was conscious of a love growing into adoration, and also of abhorrence. This I know is paradox, but I can make no other attempt to explain the feeling. I now write, after an interval of more than 10 years, with a trembling hand, with a confused and horrible recollection of certain occurrences and situations, in the ordeal through which I was unconsciously passing, though with a vivid and very sharp remembrance of the main current of my story. But I suspect in all lives there are certain emotional scenes, those in which our passions have been most wildly and terribly roused, that are of all others the most vaguely and dimly remembered. Sometimes, after an hour of apathy, my strange and beautiful companion would take my hand and hold it with a fond pressure, renewed again and again, blushing softly, gazing in my face with languid and burning eyes, and breathing so fast that her dress rose and fell with the tumultuous respiration. It was like the ardor of a lover. It embarrassed me. It was hateful and yet overpowering, and with gloating eyes she drew me to her, and her hot lips traveled along my cheek in kisses, and she would whisper, almost in sobs, "You are mine. You shall be mine. You and I are one forever." Then she had thrown herself back in her chair, with her small hands over her eyes, leaving me trembling. "Are we related?" I used to ask. What can you mean by all this? I remind you, perhaps, of someone whom you love, but you must not. I hate it. I don't know you. I don't know myself when you look and talk so. She used to sigh at my vehemence, then turn away and drop my hand. Respecting these very extraordinary manifestations, I strove in vain to form any satisfactory theory. I could not refer them to affection or trick. It was unmistakably the momentary breaking out of suppressed instinct and emotion. Was she, notwithstanding her mother's volunteered denial, subject to brief visitations of insanity? Or was there here a disguise and a romance? I had read in old storybooks of such things. What if a boyish lover had found his way into the house and sought to prosecute his suit in masquerade with the assistance of a clever old adventuress? But there were many things against this hypothesis, highly interesting as it was to my vanity. I could boast of no little attentions such as masculine gallantry delights to offer. Between these passionate moments there were long intervals of commonplace, of gaiety, of brooding melancholy, during which, except that I detected her eyes so full of melancholy fire following me, that I might have been nothing to her. Except in these brief periods of mysterious excitement, her ways were girlish. There was always a languor about her, quite incompatible with a masculine system in a state of health. In some respects, her habits were odd, perhaps not so singular in the opinion of a town lady like you as they appeared to us rustic people. She used to come down very late, generally not till 1 o'clock. She would then take a cup of chocolate, but eat nothing. We then went out for a walk, which was a mere saunter, and she seemed almost immediately exhausted, and either returned to the castle or sat on one of the benches that were placed here and there among the trees. This was a bodily languor, in which her mind did not sympathize. She was always an animated talker, and very intelligent. She sometimes alluded for a moment to her own home, or mentioned an adventure or situation, or an early recollection, which indicated a people of strange manners, and described customs of which we knew nothing. I gathered from these chance hints that her native country was much more remote than I had first fancied. As we sat thus one afternoon under the trees, a funeral passed by us. It was that of a pretty young girl, whom I had often seen, the daughter of one of the rangers of the forest. The poor man was walking behind the coffin of his darling. She was his only child, and he looked quite heartbroken. Peasants walking two and two came behind. They were singing a funeral hymn. I rose to mark my respect as they passed, and joined in the hymn they were sweetly singing. My companion shook me a little roughly, and I turned surprised. She said brusquely, "Don't you perceive how discordant that is?" "I think it's very sweet, on the contrary," I answered, vexed at the interruption, and very uncomfortable, lest the people who composed the little procession should observe and resent what was passing. I resumed, therefore, instantly, and was again interrupted. "You pierce my ears," said Carmilla, almost angrily, and stopping her ears with her tiny fingers. Besides, how can you tell that your religion and mine are the same? Your forms wound me, and I hate funerals. What a fuss. Why, you must die. Everyone must die, and are all the happier when they do. Come home. My father has gone on with the clergyman to the churchyard. I thought you knew she was to be buried today. She. I don't trouble my head about peasants. I don't know who she is, answered Carmilla, with a flash from her fine eyes. She's the poor girl who fancied she saw a ghost a fortnight ago, and has been dying ever since, till yesterday, when she expired. Tell me nothing about ghosts. I shan't sleep tonight if you do. I hope there's no plague or fever coming. All this looks very like it, I continued. The swineherd's young wife died only a week ago, and she thought something seized her by the throat as she lay in her bed, nearly strangled her. Papa says such horrible fancies do accompany some forms of fever. She was quite well the day before. She sank afterwards and died before a week. Well, her funeral is over, I hope, and her hymn sung. And our ears shan't be tortured with that discord and jargon. It has made me nervous. Sit down here beside me. Sit close. Hold my hand and press it hard, hard, harder. We had moved a little back and come to another seat. She sat down. Her face underwent a change that alarmed and even terrified me for a moment. It darkened and became horribly livid. Her teeth and hands were clenched, and she frowned and compressed her lips while she stared down upon the ground at her feet, and trembled all over with a continued shudder as irrepressible as ague. All her energies seemed strained to suppress a fit with which she then breathlessly was tugging. And at length a low convulsive cry of suffering broke from her, and gradually the hysteria subsided. There, that comes of strangling people with hymns, she said at last. Hold me still. It is passing away. And so, gradually, it did. And perhaps to dissipate the somber impression which the spectacle had left upon me, she became unusually animated and chatty, and so we got home. This was the first time I had seen her exhibit any definable symptoms of that delicacy of health which her mother had spoken of. It was the first time, also, I had seen her exhibit anything like temper. Both passed away like a summer cloud, and never but once after did I witness on her part a momentary sign of anger. I will tell you how it happened. She and I were looking out of one of the long drawing-room windows, when there entered the courtyard over the drawbridge a figure of a wanderer whom I knew very well. He used to visit the castle generally twice a year. It was the figure of a hunchback, with the sharp, lean figures that generally accompany deformity. He wore a pointed black beard, and he was smiling from ear to ear, showing his white fangs. He was dressed in buff, black, and scarlet, and crossed with more straps and belts than I could count, from which hung all manner of things. Behind, he carried a magic lantern and 2 boxes, which I knew well, in one of which was a salamander, and in the other a mandrake. These monsters used to make my father laugh. They were compounded of parts of monkeys, parrots, squirrels, fish, and hedgehogs, dried and stitched together with great neatness and startling effect. He had a fiddle, a box of conjuring apparatus, a pair of foils and masks attached to his belt, several other mysterious cases dangling about him, and a black staff with copper ferrules in his hand. His companion was a rough spare dog that followed at his heels, but stopped short, suspiciously at the drawbridge, and in a little while began to howl dismally. In the meantime, the mountebank, standing in the midst of the courtyard, raised his grotesque hat, and made us a very ceremonious bow, paying his compliments very volubly in execrable French and German not much better. Then, disengaging his fiddle, he began to scrape lively air to which he sang with a merry discord, dancing with ludicrous airs and activity that made me laugh in spite of the dog's howling. Then he advanced to the window with many smiles and salutations, and his hat in his left hand, his fiddle under his arm, and with a fluency that never took breath, he gabbled a long advertisement of all his accomplishments and resources of the various arts which he placed at our service, and the curiosities and entertainments which it was in his power, at our bidding, to display. "Will your ladyships be pleased to buy an amulet against the Oprior, which is going like the wolf I hear through these woods?" he said, dropping his hat on the pavement. "They are dying of it right and left, and here is a charm that never fails. Only pinned to the pillow, and you may laugh in his face." These charms consisted of oblong strips of vellum, with cabalistic ciphers and diagrams upon them. Carmilla instantly purchased one, and so did I. He was looking up, and we were smiling down upon him, amused, at least, I can answer for myself. His piercing black eye, as he looked up in our faces, seemed to detect something that fixed for a moment his curiosity. In an instant he unrolled a leather case, full of all manner of odd little steel instruments. "See here, my lady," he said, displaying it and addressing me. "I profess, among other things less useful, the art of dentistry." "Plague take the dog," he interpolated. "Silence, beast. He howls so that your ladyships can scarcely hear a word. Your noble friend, the young lady at your right, has the sharpest tooth. Long, thin, pointed like an awl, like a needle. With my sharp and long sight, as I look up, I have seen it distinctly. Now if it happens to hurt the young lady, I think it must. Here I am. Here are my file, my punch, my nippers. I will make it round and blunt, if her ladyship pleases. No longer the tooth of a fish, but of a beautiful young lady as she is. Hey? Is the young lady displeased? Have I been too bold? Have I offended her?" The young lady, indeed, looked very angry, as she drew back from the window. "How dares that mountebank insult us so? Where's your father? I shall demand redress from him. My father would have had the wretch tied up to the pump and flogged with a cart whip, and burnt the bones with the cattle brand." She retired from the window a step or two and sat down, and had hardly lost sight of the offender when her wrath subsided as suddenly as it had risen, and she gradually recovered her usual tone and seemed to forget the little hunchback and his follies. My father was out of spirits that evening. On coming in, he told us there had been another case very similar to the two fatal ones which had lately occurred. The sister of a young peasant on his estate, only a mile away, was very ill, had been, as she described it, attacked very nearly in the same way, and was now slowly but steadily sinking. All this, said my father, is strictly referable to natural causes. These poor people infect one another with their superstitions, and so repeat in imagination the images of terror that have infested their neighbors. But that very circumstance frightens one horribly, said Carmilla. How so? Inquired my father. I am so afraid of fancying I see such things. I think it would be as bad as reality. We are in God's hands. Nothing can happen without his permission, and all will end well for those who love him. He is our faithful creator. He has made us all and will take care of us. Creator, nature, said the young lady in answer to my gentle father. And this disease that invades the country is natural. Nature. All things proceed from nature, don't they? All things in the heaven and the earth and under the earth act and live as nature ordains? I think so. The doctor said he would come here today, said my father after a silence. I want to know what he thinks about it, and what he thinks we had better do. Doctors never did me any good, said Carmilla. Then you have been ill? I asked. More ill than you ever were, she answered. Long ago? Yes, a long time. I suffered from this very illness, but I forgot all but my pain and weakness, and they were not so bad as suffered in other diseases. You were very young then? I dare say. Let us talk no more of it. You would not wound a friend. She looked languidly in my eyes and passed her arm round my waist lovingly and led me out of the room. My father was busy over some papers near the window. Why does your papa like to frighten us? Said the pretty girl with a sigh and a little shudder. He doesn't, dear Carmilla. It's the very furthest thing from his mind. Aren't you afraid, dearest? I should be very much if I fancied there were any real danger of my being attacked as those poor people were. You are afraid to die? Yes, everyone is. But to die as lovers may, to die together, so that they may live together. Girls are caterpillars while they live in the world, to be finally butterflies when the summer comes. But in the meantime, there are grubs and larvae, don't you see? Each with their peculiar propensities, necessities, and structure. So says Monsieur Buffon in his book, in the next room. Later in the day, the doctor came and was closeted with Papa for some time. He was a skillful man of 60 and upwards. He wore powder and shaved his pale face as smooth as a pumpkin. He and Papa emerged from the room together, and I heard Papa laugh and say as they came out, Well, I do wonder at a wise man like you. What do you say to hippogriffs and dragons? The doctor was smiling and made answer, shaking his head. Nevertheless, life and death are mysterious states, and we know little of the resources of either. And so they walked on, and I heard no more. I did not know then what the doctor had been broaching, but I think I guess it now. Chapter 5. A Wonderful Likeness. This evening there arrived from Graz the grave, dark-faced son of the picture cleaner. with a horse and cart laden with two large packing cases, having many pictures in each. It was a journey of 10 leagues, and whenever a messenger arrived at the castle from our little capital of Graz, we used to crowd about him in the hall to hear the news. This arrival created in our secluded quarters quite a sensation. The cases remained in the hall, and the messenger was taken charge of by the servants till he had eaten his supper. Then, with the assistants, and armed with hammer, ripping chisel, and turnscrew, he met us in the hall, where we had assembled to witness the unpacking of the cases. Carmilla sat looking listlessly on, while one after the other the old pictures, nearly all portraits which had undergone the process of renovation, were brought to light. My mother was of an old Hungarian family, and most of these pictures, which were about to be restored to their places, had come to us through her. My father had a list in his hand from which he read as the artist rummaged out the corresponding numbers. I don't know that the pictures were very good, but they were undoubtedly very old, and some of them very curious also. They had, for the most part, the merit of being seen by me, I may say, for the first time. For the smoke and dust of time had all but obliterated them. "There's a picture I have not seen yet," said my father. "In one corner at the top of it is the name, as well as I could read, Marcia Karnstein, and the date is 1698, and I'm curious to see how it has turned out." I remembered it. It was a small picture, about 1.5 feet high and nearly square, without a frame, but it was so blackened by age that I couldn't make it out. The artist now produced it with evident pride. It was quite beautiful. It was startling. It seemed to live. It was the effigy of Carmilla. "Carmilla, dear, here's an absolute miracle. Here you are, living and smiling and ready to speak in this picture. Isn't it beautiful, Papa? And see, even the little mole on her throat." My father laughed and said, "Certainly it is a wonderful likeness." But he looked away, and to my surprise seemed but little struck by it, and went on talking to the picture cleaner, who was also something of an artist, and discoursed with intelligence about the portraits or other works which his art had just brought into light and color, while I was more and more lost in wonder the more I looked at the picture. "Will you let me hang this picture in my room, Papa?" I asked. "Certainly, dear," he said, smiling. "I'm very glad you think it so like. It must be prettier even than I thought, if it is." The young lady did not acknowledge this pretty speech, and did not seem to hear it. She was leaning back in her seat, her fine eyes under their long lashes, gazing on me in contemplation, and she smiled in a kind of rapture. "And now you can read quite plainly the name that is written in the corner. It is not Marcia. It looks as if it was done in gold. The name is Mircalla, Countess Karnstein. And this is a little coronet over and underneath, AD 1698. I am descended from the Karnsteins. That is, Mamma was." "Ah," said the lady languidly. "So am I think. A very long descent, very ancient. Are there any Karnsteins living now?" "None who bear the name, I believe. The family were ruined, I believe, in some civil wars long ago. But the ruins of the castle are only about 3 miles away." "How interesting," she said languidly. "But see what beautiful moonlight. She glanced through the hall door, which stood open a little. Suppose you take a little rambling around the court and look down at the road and river. It is so like the night you came to us, I said. She sighed, smiling. She rose, and each with her arm about the other's waist, we walked upon the pavement. In silence, slowly we walked down to the drawbridge, where the beautiful landscape opened before us. And so, you were thinking of the night I came here, she almost whispered. Are you glad I came? Delighted, dear Carmilla, I answered. And you asked for the picture you think like me to hang in your room, she murmured with a sigh, as she drew her arm closer about my waist and let her pretty head sink upon my shoulder. How romantic you are, Carmilla, I said. Whenever you tell me your story, it will be made up chiefly of one great romance. She kissed me silently. I am sure, Carmilla, that you've been in love, that there is, at this moment, an affair of the heart going on. I have been in love with no one, and never shall, she whispered, unless it should be with you. How beautiful she looked in the moonlight. Shy and strange was the look with which she quickly hid her face in my neck and hair, with tumultuous sighs that seemed almost a sob, and pressed in mine a hand that trembled. Her soft cheek was glowing against mine. Darling, darling, she murmured, I live in you, and you would die for me. I love you so. I started from her. She was gazing on me with eyes from which all fire, all meaning had flown, and a face colorless and apathetic. Is there a chill in the air, dear? She said drowsily. I almost shiver. Have I been dreaming? Let us come in. Come, come in. You look ill, Carmilla, a little faint. You certainly must take some wine, I said. Yes, I will. I'm better now. I shall be quite well in a few minutes. Yes, do give me a little wine, answered Carmilla as we approached the door. Let us look again for a moment. It is the last time, perhaps, I shall see the moonlight with you. How do you feel now, dear Carmilla? Are you really better? I asked. I was beginning to take alarm, lest she should have been stricken with the strange epidemic that had invaded the country about us. Papa would be grieved beyond measure, I added, if he thought you were ever so little ill without immediately letting us know. We have a very skillful doctor near us, the physician who was with Papa today. I'm sure he is. I know how kind you all are, but, dear child, I am quite well again. There is nothing ever wrong with me but a little weakness. People say I am languid. I am incapable of exertion. I can scarcely walk as far as a child of 3. And every now and again, the little strength I have falters, and I become as you have just seen me. But after all, I am very easily set up again. In a moment, I am perfectly myself. See how I have recovered? So indeed she had, and she and I talked a great deal, and very animated she was. and the remainder of that evening passed without any recurrence of what I called her infatuations. I mean, her crazy talk and looks which embarrassed and even frightened me. But there occurred that night an event which gave my thoughts quite a new turn, and seemed to startle even Carmilla's languid nature into momentary energy. Chapter 6. A Very Strange Agony. When we got into the drawing room, and had sat down to our coffee and chocolate, although Carmilla did not take any, she seemed quite herself again, and Madame and Mademoiselle de la Fontaine joined us, and made a little card party, in the course of which Papa came in for what he called his dish of tea. When the game was over, he sat down beside Carmilla on the sofa and asked her, a little anxiously, whether she had heard from her mother since her arrival. She answered no. He then asked whether she knew where a letter would reach her at present. I cannot tell, she answered ambiguously, but I have been thinking of leaving you. You have been already too hospitable and too kind to me. I have given you an infinity of trouble, and I should wish to take a carriage tomorrow and post in pursuit of her. I know where I shall ultimately find her, although I dare not yet tell you. But you must not dream of any such thing, exclaimed my father, to my great relief. We cannot afford to lose you so, and I won't consent to your leaving us, except under the care of your mother, who was so good as to consent to your remaining with us till she should return herself. I should be quite happy if I knew that you had heard from her, but this evening the accounts of the progress of the mysterious disease that has invaded our neighborhood grow even more alarming. And my beautiful guest, I do feel the responsibility, unaided by advice from your mother, very much. But I shall do my best, and one thing is certain, that you must not think of leaving us without her distinct direction to that effect. We should suffer too much in parting from you to consent to it so easily. Thank you, sir, 1,000 times for your hospitality, she answered, smiling bashfully. You have all been too kind to me. I have seldom been so happy in all my life before, as in your beautiful chateau, under your care, and in the society of your dear daughter. So he gallantly, in his old-fashioned way, kissed her hand, smiling and pleased at her little speech. I accompanied Carmilla as usual to her room, and sat and chatted with her while she was preparing for bed. Do you think, I said at length, that you will ever fully confide in me? She turned round smiling, but made no answer, only continued to smile on me. You won't answer that? I said. You can't answer pleasantly. I ought not to have asked you. You are quite right to ask me that, or anything. You do not know how dear you are to me, or you could not think any confidence too great to look for. But I am under vows, no nun half awfully so, and I dare not tell my story yet, even to you. The time is very near when you shall know everything. You will think me cruel, very selfish, but love is always selfish. The more ardent, the more selfish. How jealous I am that you cannot know. You must come with me, loving me to death, or else hate me, and still come with me, and hating me through death and after. There is no such word as indifference in my apathetic nature. Now, Carmilla, you're going to talk your wild nonsense again, I said hastily. Not I, silly little fool as I am, and full of whims and fancies. For your sake, I'll talk like a sage. Were you ever at a ball? No? How you do run on. What is it like? How charming it must be. I almost forget. It is years ago now. I laughed. You are not so old. Your first ball can hardly be forgotten yet. I remember everything about it with an effort. I see it all, as divers see what is going on above them through a medium, dense, rippling, but transparent. There occurred that night what has confused the picture and made its colors faint. I was all but assassinated in my bed, wounded here, she touched her breast, and was never the same since. Were you near dying? Yes, very. A cruel love, strange love, that would have taken my life. Love will have its sacrifices. No sacrifice without blood. Let us go to sleep now. I feel so lazy. How can I get up just now and lock my door? She was lying with her tiny hands buried in her rich wavy hair, under her cheek, her little head upon the pillow, and her glittering eyes followed me whenever I moved, with a kind of shy smile that I could not decipher. I bid her good night, and crept from the room with an uncomfortable sensation. I have often wondered whether our pretty guest ever said her prayers. I certainly had not seen her upon her knees. In the morning she never came down until long after our family prayers were over, and at night she never left the drawing room to attend our brief evening prayers in the hall. If it had not been that it had casually come out in one of our careless talks that she had been baptized, I should have doubted her being a Christian. Religion was a subject on which I had never heard her speak a word. If I had known the world better, this particular neglect or antipathy would not have so much surprised me. The precautions of nervous people are infectious, and persons of a like temperament are pretty sure, after a time, to imitate them. I had adopted Carmilla's habit of locking her bedroom door, having taken into my head all her whimsical alarms about midnight invaders and prowling assassins. I had also adopted her precaution of making a brief search through her room to satisfy herself that no lurking assassin or robber was ensconced. These wise measures taken, I had got into my bed and fell asleep. A light was burning in my room. This was an old habit of very early date, and which nothing could have tempted me to dispense with. Thus fortified, I might take my rest in peace. But dreams come through stone walls, light up dark rooms, or darken light ones, and their persons make their exits and their entrances as they please, and laugh at locksmiths. I had a dream that night that was the beginning of a very strange agony. I cannot call it a nightmare, for I was quite conscious of being asleep. But I was equally conscious of being in my room and lying in my bed, precisely as I actually was. I saw, or fancied I saw, the room and its furniture just as I had last seen it, except that it was very dark, and I saw something moving round the foot of the bed, which at first I could not accurately distinguish. But I soon saw that it was a sooty black animal that resembled a monstrous cat. It appeared to me about 4 or 5 feet long, for it measured fully the length of the hearthrug as it passed over it, and it continued toing and froing with the lithe, sinister restlessness of a beast in a cage. I could not cry out, although, as you may suppose, I was terrified. Its pace was growing faster, and the room rapidly darker and darker, and at length so dark that I could no longer see anything of it but its eyes. I felt it spring lightly onto the bed. The two broad eyes approached my face, and suddenly I felt a stinging pain, as if two large needles darted an inch or two apart, deep into my breast. I waked with a scream. The room was lighted by the candle that burnt there all through the night, and I saw a female figure standing at the foot of the bed, a little at the right side. It was in a dark, loose dress, and its hair was down and covered its shoulders. A block of stone could not have been more still. There was not the slightest stir of respiration. As I stared at it, the figure appeared to have changed its place, and was now nearer the door, and then close to it. The door opened, and it passed out. I was now relieved and able to breathe and move. My first thought was that Carmilla had been playing a trick on me, and that I had forgotten to secure my door. I hastened to it, and found it locked as usual on the inside. I was afraid to open it. I was horrified. I sprang into my bed, and covered my head up in the bedclothes, and lay there more dead than alive till morning.